it is this curious paradox of being a very sacred place. It is a church devoted to the daily round of worship to Almighty God, but it's also a very secular place, ranging from grand royal tombs to the tomb of the unknown warrior.
Have you ever walked into a place and felt like time stopped breathing for a moment, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, listening to your footsteps? That's what happens the first time you step into Westminster Abbey. It's strange on the surface. It's just a church, a building of soaring stone and stained glass, a place you've seen 100 times in photographs of royal weddings and coronations. But the truth is, this place isn't just sacred. It's haunted. Not by ghosts, at least not the kind that rattle chains, but by history itself. For nearly 1,000 years, this church has been the stage where Britain has played out its grandest dramas. Kings and queens crowned under vaulted ceilings. Soldiers and poets laid to rest on the same stone floors where tourists now stand with cameras. Every corner hums with stories of power, betrayal, brilliance, and loss. But there's something most visitors don't realize. Beyond the famous aisles and altars, beyond the parts where tour guides speak in reverent whispers, there are secret rooms that were locked and forgotten for centuries, places where even staff had never walked. And when scientists finally stepped inside one of these forbidden spaces, they found clues to the Abbey's past that had been hiding in the dark for hundreds of years. That's the paradox of Westminster Abbey. From the outside, it looks like a monument to tradition, a cathedral frozen in time. But the deeper you go, the more you realize it's something else, entirely a living scrapbook of Britain itself. Faith and fame share these walls. Saints and skeptics lie side by side. Charles Darwin, who once shook the foundations of religious belief, rests only steps from Sir Isaac Newton, the man who unraveled gravity's mysteries, and Stephen Hawking, who spent his life asking questions about the very beginning of time. For a house of God, the Abbey seems to embrace not just devotion, but doubt too. And some of its stories? They're not just surprising. They're downright strange. There's Ben Jonson, the playwright who was buried upright because he couldn't afford a proper grave. When workers disturbed his burial in 1859, his head with its shock of red hair rolled right out and was passed around for a few curious hours before being put back. His marker still reads, "O rare Ben Jonson," a pun that doubles as a prayer in Latin. Then there's Oliver Cromwell, the man who toppled a king. He was buried here with full honors, but when the monarchy returned, they dug him up, put him on trial, declared him guilty, and beheaded his corpse. His head then spent centuries passing from hand to hand like a grim collector's item before finally being reburied in 1960. Some of the Abbey's residents lived lives so long they feel like legends. Like Tom Parr, the farmer who supposedly reached the age of 52, living through 10 different monarchs before dying after a single trip to London. Not from old age, they say, but from the city's rich food and polluted air. And then there are the princes in the Tower, Edward and Richard, whose mysterious deaths are still whispered about. Their bones, if they truly are theirs, rest here in a stone urn, centuries after they vanished, their uncle Richard III forever shadowed by suspicion. It's tempting to see these stories as curiosities, like strange exhibits in a museum. But the Abbey has always been more than that. It's not just where history is remembered, it's where history was made. Walk a little further, and you'll find the Lady Chapel, built in the early 1500s as a shrine to Catholic saints. Within decades, it would become a symbol of a new faith as the Reformation swept England. Where monks once prayed, knights of the empire would later hang their banners. This is a place that changed with the tides of power. Henry VIII's break from Rome, Elizabeth I's rise, the monarchy's triumphs and tragedies. Even the Abbey's legal status is unique. Thanks to Elizabeth, it became a royal peculiar church, not under the Archbishop of Canterbury, but directly under the monarch. In a way, it became a mirror of the crown itself. When the monarchy's power wavered, so did the Abbey's importance. When the crown stood strong, the Abbey shone like a jewel. But maybe the most haunting stories lie not in politics or religion, but in death itself. Here, Mary I and Elizabeth I, sisters who loathed each other in life, are buried together by James I, their uneasy truce cemented in stone. Their shared tomb may look serene, but the tension between them lingers, a silent reminder that even in death, grudges can echo through time. Every corner of Westminster Abbey whispers something. Even its walls tell a story literally. Look closely and you'll see a section where intricate patterns suddenly stop, replaced by plain stone. This wasn't an artistic choice. It was a sign of bankruptcy. Henry III poured a fortune into rebuilding the abbey, but when his son inherited an empty treasury, construction halted mid-design. That bare wall is a 1,000-year-old budget carved into stone. The abbey's memorials are just as revealing. In St. Michael's Chapel stands the monument of Elizabeth Nightingale, where her husband is carved shielding her from the figure of death himself. The image was inspired by a nightmare her brother-in-law had, and legend says a thief once tried to steal from the monument only to drop his crowbar and flee in terror from the statue's gaze. Elsewhere, humor sneaks into the solemnity. One abbot, John Islip, signed his name in stone with a pun, a carving of an eye and a slip of wood, Islip. Another tomb shows golden porcupines, a family crest turned into a Gothic surprise. And in the choir stalls, the carvings are downright irreverent, showing pagan symbols, mischievous creatures, and even a wife hitting her husband. Some stories feel almost like folklore. There's Wilgefortis, the bearded female saint, who prayed for ugliness to escape a forced marriage. God granted her prayer, and her father had her crucified. She's not officially recognized by the church, but here she is, watching over Westminster. Then there's Elizabeth Russell, immortalized with one foot on a skull, sparking rumors she died from a poisoned needle prick. The truth was tuberculosis, but the skull served its purpose, a reminder that even the powerful cannot escape death. Every statue, every missing tile, every monument tells a story. Some tragic, some hilarious, some chilling. But these are only the things you can see. The Abbey's deepest secrets live in the spaces you'll never walk, the locked rooms and hidden chambers where dust has gathered for centuries. It took scientists to uncover some of them, and what they found changed the way we see this ancient place forever. By the time the 1800s drew to a close, Westminster Abbey was starting to feel like it had reached its limits. For centuries, this church had welcomed kings, queens, poets, and generals, granting each their grand memorials. Marble statues stood shoulder to shoulder, towering monuments crowded every aisle, and the walls groaned under the weight of history. There was hardly any space left to honor the dead with the grandeur they were once afforded. And so, a quiet shift began. Modest tablets replaced towering sculptures, cremation became a practical choice over traditional burials, and the abbey slowly adjusted to a world it could no longer expand to fit. Then, in 1920, came a moment that transcended tradition. A simple grave was placed in the abbey's nave, the tomb of the unknown warrior. No name, no title, just the remains of a soldier who represented every man who never came home from World War I. For the first time, royalty and commoners alike bowed in equal reverence to someone they would never know. Families who had no graves to visit found one here, a place where they could grieve, weep, and finally feel close to the loved ones they lost. Out of respect, it became the only grave in Westminster Abbey that no one is allowed to walk over. Even today, every visitor instinctively slows their steps as they pass by, their whispers softening as if the silence itself is sacred. And yet, even as the Abbey's role evolved, it refused to let go of its traditions. Every coronation since 1066 has taken place here, a record unmatched anywhere in Europe. Through bombings, fires, and political upheavals, Westminster Abbey has endured. During World War II, London burned, and bombs tore holes into its ancient walls. One explosion in September 1940 ripped through part of the abbey, leaving scars that remain beneath glass today, a permanent reminder of how close this place came to vanishing entirely. By the 21st century, preservation had become just as important as ceremony. Each ancient tile, every crumbling sculpture, every inch of stone needed protection from pollution, time, and the millions of footsteps that passed through each year. Scientists, historians, and conservators worked quietly behind the scenes, tending to this ancient building like doctors caring for a patient whose heartbeat had been steady for 1,000 years. But their work wasn't just about polishing marble or sealing cracks. Behind closed doors, they were unlocking spaces no one had entered for centuries. Hidden staircases led them into dark corners coated in dust, locked chambers no guide had ever shown, and forgotten rooms where time stood completely still. And one day, their curiosity carried them into a part of the abbey that even staff barely knew existed, a secret attic that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about this place. High above the nave, visitors could sometimes see it, a shadowy gallery that wrapped around the ceiling like a secret balcony. Few knew its name, the Triforium. Fewer still knew its story. Its entrance was hidden behind a small wooden door in Poet's Corner, and even if you found it, you'd face a narrow spiral staircase that twisted upward for 21 meters. Few ever made the climb. That isolation left the Triforium frozen in time. When a team of conservators finally stepped through its doors during a 19 million restoration project, it felt like stepping through a portal into another century. Dust hung in the air, catching the light in soft beams. Wooden floors groaned under their feet, the same boards laid centuries earlier. Entire sections looked untouched since the 1700s when Sir Christopher Wren reimagined parts of the abbey. For generations, this space had been a storeroom, a forgotten attic where priceless treasures were hidden away rather than displayed. Stacked against its walls were carved stones from medieval repairs, wooden chests holding yellowed documents, and relics no one had seen in lifetimes. Tomb. The mother of Henry VII sat carefully tucked away, and a memorial to playwright John Gay had been hidden there for decades to protect fragile wall paintings below. But the strangest discoveries were the smallest. A faded painting of an African grey parrot perched on a wooden beam from 1702, as though someone had placed it there yesterday. Fragments of royal armor, splintered altar pieces, and carvings from across the centuries lay scattered like breadcrumbs through history. Piece by piece, the Triforium revealed itself as more than just storage. It was a time capsule, a secret museum of Britain's royal, political, and religious life, preserved by dust and darkness. The restoration team worked slowly, replacing floors, adding lighting, and bringing in ventilation. Their vision was to turn this forgotten attic into a gallery the public could finally see. But when it reopened, no one was prepared for just how breathtaking it would be. Standing 21 meters above the abbey's floor, the view is unlike anything you can imagine. From this height, the abbey unfolds like a masterpiece. The vaulted ceilings stretch endlessly above you, while below, the intricate cosmati pavement glimmers softly. The great west door frames the nave in perfect symmetry. Poet John Benjamin once called this the finest view in Europe, and standing there now, it's impossible to disagree. For centuries, only a handful of archivists, workmen, and broadcasters had ever seen this space. Now, after centuries of secrecy, visitors could walk its narrow halls and touch the same beams that have held this building for hundreds of years. They could see relics once forgotten, Viking artifacts displayed alongside medieval stone carvings, hidden memorials returned to view, and everyday objects that tell the stories of ordinary lives lived in this extraordinary place. The Triforium has become more than a gallery. It's a bridge, a connection between the abbey's towering public grandeur and its private, hidden soul. You can feel that as you walk through it. History doesn't feel distant here. It feels alive, like the abbey itself is whispering its secrets into your ear. And yet, even this breathtaking space is only part of the story. Because Westminster Abbey isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living, breathing chronicle of everything Britain has been and continues to become. Its walls carry scars from bombs that nearly destroyed it. Its galleries display wax effigies sculpted from death masks of kings and queens whose faces stare back with eerie precision. Its oldest door, dating back to 1050, is carved from an oak tree that may have sprouted while Romans still walked this land. Its statues include Martin Luther King Jr., a reminder that this ancient church continues to mark not just British history, but human history. Every inch of this building holds a secret, a reminder, or a warning. The Abbey's greatest mystery is that it has never been frozen in time. It's alive. It evolves with each coronation, each restoration, and every name carved into its wood by the curious hands of schoolboys 200 years ago. So when you walk through Westminster Abbey, you're not just visiting a church. You're stepping into a 1,000-year-old conversation between faith and doubt, power and humility, life and death. And as you pause in front of the tomb of the unknown warrior, or look up into the towering arches, you might feel it, the weight of history pressing gently on your shoulders, as if this ancient place is reminding you that you too are now a part of its story.